And we're back. And we are still working on the Taking Turns version of River. So, we hacked our way through a whole bunch of her stuff. But I do have time, so let's do another one. See if we can't get through more of it. Because we are going through at a good pace, so I don't feel like I'm slowing down while trying to make cuts. So, should be able to get quite a few more cards off the list before I'm done. Yeah, we're just going to scroll through it again. Definitely want Crucible. What does our Trinket Mage actually get? Because it only gets 1 and 0 drops. So it gets our Soul Ring, our Mana Vault. Can't get that. Getting those. I'm almost wondering if it should be the 2-drop one instead. Like Tribute Mage or something. Getting those. Gets Conjurer's Bauble, so we're up to 3. Top is one of the bigger. Besides Soul Ring, Top is probably the biggest one that it gets for me. Because Top's super helpful with this deck. Yeah, we're up to 4 right now. Everflowing's 5. Any other cheap artifacts? I feel like I scrolled past a few things without processing them properly. Okay. But none of them are artifacts. Okay. Good. Miss anything? Does get the Merchant's Dockhand. I don't know if that's staying or not, but it does. It is a 6 card that I can get. These. Nope. Oh. Yeah, so it's currently only getting 6 cards, and only 2 of them are super important to the deck. Let's see. Is it Tribute Mage that gets 2 drops? I think it is. That's from Modern Horizons 1. Let's see, what are my 2-drop artifacts? Because it felt like I had a lot of them going through, although not all of them are super important either. So Felwar Stone is one, Soldevi Digger, which is one of my combo pieces, Mind Stone, Scroll Rack, Monolith, Lightning Greaves, Rado Lantern, which again is a combo piece. Is it Signet? Cold Steel Heart. A 9 already. Brine Clock is 10. Torpor Orb's 11. These are fetchable. Form Engine's not. Skyclave's not. Excuse me. Crystal Ball isn't. Arcane Signet. so I can fetch 12 cards. 2 of them are combo pieces, and the other one, Scroll Rack, is comparable to getting Sensei's Top. Also, I can tutor up the Lightning Greaves if I need it for one of the either tap activated ability creatures or one of the I do a thing when I attack, which we have like 4 total in the deck. So yeah, I kind of feel like Trinket Mage should be Tribute Mage. So, cut that. Modern Horizons. This, and then we just go like that. So yeah, didn't actually cut a card, but I do think Tribute Mage is doing more for the deck than Trinket Mage is doing, so. Back down to Mirrodin, because that's where we were. Conjurer's Bauble, Crucible of Worlds, Rado Lantern. I have a fair amount of deck manipulation. I don't necessarily need counterbalance, but it seems like it's fine in the deck. Like, that's one of those cards that wouldn't be in Nin because I don't have enough ways to make sure the top card of my deck is the relevant casting cost, but it seems a lot easier to do to counter, like, interactive cards that are like 1, 2, and 3 mana. I should be able to do. Or stop things with a base 0 cost that are problematic. Anything along the lines of Chalice, Engineered Explosives, both Chalices, Everflowing and Void, if they show up. Deseret definitely stays in because he can tutor for almost every artifact in my deck. Like when he comes down, there are a few things that I could cash him in for, but for the most part, I think I want to stick to like the 3s and less, but that's fine. We don't actually have any comes into play abilities left, right? Like, this Torpor Orb is all upside. That's another thing Nin can't run because she's relying on the when this creature comes into play, return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand effects. And I don't think there are any comes into play abilities left in the deck. And if that's true or close enough... Oh, we have literally the Tribute Mage. Whirlpool Warrior technically counts. I don't think I need him, though. Like, I can keep the Winds of Change, but we can cut him. Site. So yeah, if it winds up just being Tribute Mage, I'd be okay with that. Like, I'm not messing myself up too bad by having my one creature shut off that's just there to tutor in the early game for various combo pieces or mana rocks to ramp me so I can get going. Relic, Burnished Heart. I probably don't need the Burnished Heart either. I already cut the Wayfarer's Bauble, and I ramp pretty well with artifact mana. Don't think I need land-based ramp also. Baral, Disallowed, Dockhand, Obstructionist. Mission Field. Emery has a comes into playability, but it's just to mill me for, and sometimes I'm not even going to care about that. It's more along the lines of I want to be able to get back my dead artifacts for her, so I don't care if I shut her off. Alrund's not connected to comes into play. And every time I see Archmage, I keep thinking I'm probably going to wind up cutting that eventually, so just go ahead and do that. This is fine. Theorist does have a comes into playability for itself and my artifacts, but I don't think Torpor Orb cares about artifacts. I think it's just creatures. Yeah, creatures entering the battlefield. So I won't get the loot off of Theorist entering, but that's not the main reason it's in the deck. It's to put cards back into my deck with the second ability, so. No. Oh, Leyline, Chandra. Spellseeker has a comes into playability too. So right now I'm shutting off 2 and Dockside. So I have 3 really good comes into playabilities that I'd be shutting down with Torpor Orb. It's probably still worth it. I have so few that I'm not really hurting myself that badly with it, but I am hurting myself more than I thought I was. Alright, so we cut those 3, so let's pop back up here. Get us down to 103. Torpor Orb is just so good when you can run it, though. Like, everything that people were complaining about with Elish Norn when she was first spoiled is true of Torpor Orb also, because so many decks rely on their comes into play abilities in place of additional copies of interaction that you can actually get to the point where players can't interact with your things properly because all of their spells are creatures coming into play to do their thing. So they might not be able to destroy a problematic artifact or, you know, flash in a Snapcaster to counter or something. So only having 3 creatures negatively affected by it, it's still a little bit rough. Because Torpor Orb is so cheap that we're likely to get it down early and then find these cards later. We do have enough deck manipulation, though, that we should be able to avoid them if Torpor Orb is in play. And we have a few draw and discard effects, and we have Jace to, like, put them back on top of our deck and then mill them away or something. So we do have enough ways to get rid of them if they become dead cards. I guess that's fine. Alright, we cleared them off the list, so let's get them off the side thing too. Maybe I need a list for my interaction so I can figure out exactly what I have. Make sure I don't have any weak points. We're going to go just straight up interaction, though, rather than go, like, here are all the counter spells, here are all of the artifact kill and whatnot, so. It's a little bumpy having them all right next to each other without rhyme or reason to what they actually interact with, but I feel like I don't have enough general interaction, so I want to see what I do have. Because I might have more than I think that I do, and then we can make some cuts from the less impressive bits and pieces. Ascending. Steel, Commandeer. Aegis, Mystic, Pact of Negation. Yeah, I might have like a couple too many counter spells, and we'll be able to cut some of the less impressive ones. And if I actually have enough, we might also be able to cut a few of the other pieces of interaction too. Karn is definitely in here to be interaction. On Fire the Damned and Devastation Tide. Okay, we'll grab both of you together. Sonic, Vandal Blast. Damn it, Electromancer, you're like stopping me from being able to put them together too. Okay. And Cursive Swine. Yeah, just the number of counter spells I've cut or copied off the list makes me think I have way too many. All disallow. Stream, Field, Sinister Sabotage. The 20 out of 24. Okay. Pop down here. Interaction. Counter spell. Mana Drain. Force. Misdirection. O-Stone. Commandeer. Counterbalance. Pact. Cryptic. Core. Karn. Miracles. Disallow. Destructionist. Sabotage. Okay, so clear all. And sabotage again. No. No. Shark Typhoon. Jace. Relic, no. Nope. Force of Negation. Spell Crumple. And these two. Ah, man, I would have had enough room for exactly all of the interaction I had on the list on the clipboard. Yeah, this is definitely way too many. So sabotage and not disallow, the scry one, dissolve or something. Yeah, dissolve. Can definitely both go. Active negation, counterbalance, commandeer. We probably don't need. I do like having misdirection for the same reason I like deflecting SWAT in this deck, being able to change the target sometimes on things that can't normally be countered can be relevant, or just stopping the opponent from doing the thing they were going to do. Yeah, we might not need Devastation Tide and Cyclonic Rift. I do like having Bonfire still in the deck. That's a fine way to top deck an answer repeatedly until it solves all of my problems. We probably don't need the Imprisoned in the Moon anymore. So cut that. We have Summary Dismissal and Nimble Obstructionist, so we probably don't need Disallow also. I do like Summary Dismissal more, so I think we keep that one. I am amused by Spell Crumple putting itself on the bottom, but maybe that's just a cute trick for this deck. Because we can already put our other counter spells on the bottom. This one forces itself to go there, even if we don't want it to. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's more a cute trick than actual thing that we want to do. Which is sad, because I was very amused by having the card on the list. Yeah, I think we just run Cyclonic Rift and we don't bother with Devastation Tide in this version. I'm wondering if Counterbalance isn't also just a cute trick most of the time. I'm starting to think that maybe it is. Like, more so than that, it's a good card. Our deck. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. And 7. Okay, so we take all those off the list. Pop back up here. So we're down to 96 now. Clear all. Save, because I haven't done that recently. Hey. We chopped our way through a bunch of this. Probably need to make a few more cuts down here. Like, it's possible I don't need Misdirection with all of the other counter spells I have. It's also possible that I don't want Commandeer in this build. I run Commandeer in Nin, but I also don't have, like, Deflecting Swat in Nin. I just have Fierce Guardianship. Because Nin cares a lot less about redirecting spells, but I think I need River to not randomly die sometimes. So that way the combo keeps going. I don't need to put the spell that I need to draw on the bottom and then have her explode before I get to draw it. Seems like it would be terrible for me. It's also possible that I don't need Pact of Negation in this build, We're almost definitely running it in the third deck, if I can figure it out. Yeah, maybe Pact of Negation can go. We have so many other free counter spells and interaction, or, no mana ones anyway. Pact is just so good when you're going off, but I'm going off by taking infinite turns, so I will have to pay for Pact of Negation eventually. So it's not as free as other combo decks find it. Yeah, okay. Take that one off the list then. Yeah, I think maybe we do get rid of Commandeer. Nin draws a ton of cards, especially with her own ability, like just targeting herself. So she can spare 2 extra cards from her hand a lot of the time and still have like a counter spell in hand afterwards if she makes it back to her untap step, but I don't know that River is capable of that, seeing as how she doesn't draw a ton of extra cards just innately. Yeah, for the most part, I've been going over how River can do these things that Nin can't reasonably do by putting the cards on the bottom, but Nin does have her advantages also, and one of those advantages is just near infinite cards in hand constantly. So she is very, very likely to refresh her hand at any given point during the game. So a card like Commandeer doesn't really hurt. Right, there's so many Commander on the list. Fact. Got those 2 off. Back up here, down to 94. Yeah, no, she only needs 34 cuts already. This is the third, technically, building River deck. Again, it helps that I have a basic blueprint for Nin, and we're just figuring out what cards do and don't work for River at this point. Kendra, Tezzeret, Jace, Dreamstone. Maybe she doesn't need Dreamstone Hedron either, which does do a bit of damage to Muzio and what he can look at with his ability, but like, if we use, because Dreamstone Hedron is a very expensive artifact that ramps me further and then eventually lets me draw cards. Nin uses that because she's a very mana hungry deck, because she needs to be able to cast the spell that gets her Time Walk back, usually in the same turn that she's going to cast a Time Walk. So that's usually 9 to 11 mana in a single turn cycle. So she needs that mana way more intensely than River does. So I'm wondering if we can get rid of Dreamstone Hedron. Actually, now that I say that out loud, I'm wondering if we can get rid of Mana Vault. Like, it's fine in the deck, but she doesn't have the exact same mana requirements that Nin does. I think River is better off with, like, Felwar Stone, Arcane Signet type cards than she is with most of the 1 mana make 3 mana, but then it does, like, things like Mana Vault and Grim Monolith are worse for her than they are for Nin, so it is another card that goes infinite with Tezzeret, though, and the what's its name? uh, Lithiform Engine. And once it's gone infinite with them, like once it's made 1,000,000,000 colorless mana, we can deplete that mana to untap a colored mana source artifact with Tezzeret, so that way we can convert, like, I have 1,000,000,000 colorless mana, but for every 2 mana that I want to spend, I can convert one of those billion mana into a blue, so I can go from 2 billion colorless to 1 billion blue mana and start spamming Time Walks at you until I've taken enough turns. Like, once I have infinite mana that way, casting anything is pretty easy. I don't know that River needs Rhystic Study. We all know my opinions on putting in cards that are just generically good that aren't helping the deck and watching me at all. You know, I usually don't put the staples in unless I know what I'm doing with them. And Rhystic Study is in here to tie up a little bit of mana from our opponents and potentially let me draw a couple extra cards. Yeah, I find Rhystic Study, for the most part, to be more annoying than good. But everybody swears by it and jams it in so many decks that I feel like I have to justify myself every time I don't put it in a deck or cut it from a deck. Even though I've done that literally every time I've glossed over it or cut it from a deck. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not doing anything to constrict your mana, or to make it so that you have to cast a bunch of spells. So if you're not naturally doing that on your own, and that is the argument a lot of people use for like cards like this and Smothering Tithe, is that sometimes players' decks are just designed to do that on their own. And when you catch a player like that with a card like this, you get the resources that you were expecting to get out of it. And, you know, there are going to be decks that are Stormish combo decks that need to play a bunch of spells in a single turn in order to win. And they just have to shrug and go, the heck with it, I'm just going to let you draw a bunch of cards because I'm going to try and go off this turn. And a card like Rhystic Study not only gives you cards at that point, but can draw you interaction for their combo. Similarly, some decks just need to draw a whole bunch of cards at once just to naturally do their thing. Like my Nin deck will just draw a ton of cards at once, and a card like Smothering Tithe being in play makes that a lot worse for me, because now I'm giving you a ton of mana to interact with my combo with by drawing, you know, I drew 10 cards and I do not have the mana to cast a Time Warp after drawing 10 cards and pay, you know, 20 mana in order to not let you get 10 treasure. So yeah, the power is there. Like, you can just jam it in a deck and it will work enough times that people are just like, yeah, no, you should just have these in every single deck. Why are you not running them? And it's like, because some decks can play around them. And some decks can play around them long enough to kill them. Or, you know, they're not crippled by them the way you want them to be, and they don't have to give you a ton of resources either. So it slows the game pace down without actually getting you anything in the long run. And it depends on the power level of the decks too. Like, some decks, they need to be able to draw a ton of cards or cast a ton of spells in order to win, and they are designed to do that very efficiently. So you can monkey wrench them real hard with a Rhystic Study or a Smothering Tithe. But at the same time, I am more inclined to run those cards in decks where I am forcing you to do the thing, on top of you might do it on your own if I can't force you to. Like, I prefer those cards in decks like that. Also, it stops my decks from being too samey, because I already run a lot of the same cards to let me do my thing more consistently. which is why every one of my decks has a ton of fetch lands and Sensei's Top. Like, I just like to see as many cards as possible while building the deck, so... Because I only have one of each card, and I don't always have Demonic Tutor, because I'm not always in black, so anytime I can more consistently see the cards I want to see every game, and I do feel like Top does that enough for me in the decks that I run it in. And some decks don't need that, and then they wind up not running Top, but it's very rare for me. Anyway, so yeah, I think we can cut Rhystic Study. If you don't like that, by all means, when we get to the 60 cards, pick the one you think is least good in the deck and throw that one out and put Rhystic Study back in. I don't think you're wrong for doing that. I just don't think, for my play style, I just want to jam Rhystic Study in decks where I don't have a plan for why you're going to not pay for it. Because I almost never let players draw for Rhystic Study, and while it does slow me down sometimes, it doesn't slow me down enough, I feel like. Like, there have been plenty of times where somebody's played Rhystic Study, and I just play around it for the rest of the game, and it's fine, because it didn't draw them any cards. They spent a card on it, and it annoyed me rather than actually doing anything to advance them to a winning game state, so... I already cut the Whirlpool Warrior. I do like the idea of being able to take a handful of cards I don't want, but I think we have enough other ways to manipulate where I should be fine. Like, this one is when I have a fistful of bad cards, and I've scryed a bunch of bad cards to the bottom, trying to find something good to scry the bottom for my next draw step. Like, if I still have mana left over. And this thing is 1 red to cast, so it's actually super easy to leave the mana up. It is super easy to have a mana left over at that point. Maybe I leave that in. Maybe Amnesia's not worth it. Like, I do have enough free counter spells, I might just be able to force my way through a little bit of interaction rather than having to take it away in the first place. Okay, we did get Rhystic Study off the top though, so go ahead and delete that. I think Amnesia will be better in the one that's not running Time Walks, because then we can just keep recurring that, and that should be enough to win us a game if nobody has a hand anymore. Unless there's some weird lands deck, you know, and they can draw a ton of cards by having lands to work with and the cards they have in play, then Amnesia can't grab the lands out of their hand to make them stop. Yeah, I'm just imagining, like, that one Sea Serpent that gives you an extra land drop and lets you draw a card when you play a land, and Tatiova, and it's just like, I'm gonna Amnesia you. I have 3 lands in my hand. I will have a fresh hand by the next turn cycle. I will have drawn at least 5 cards, probably more. Some of this empty space as I go through. What else can we get rid of? What else is no longer pulling its weight or was in here for reasons that probably aren't entirely true or had faulty logic behind them to begin with? They're either not true anymore or they were never true and I just convinced myself otherwise. What artifacts specifically am I copying with Metamorph? Like with Nin, sometimes I'm copying the creatures that get back my spells. Sometimes I'm copying like a Dreamstone Hedron for mana. Sometimes I'm copying it to draw extra cards. So there's a lot of options with that, but in River's case, I don't think I need it for that. So we might actually not need Metamorph, which is a little tiny bit much, but because there's still a lot of powerful things you can copy with a Metamorph just randomly, but it might not be doing anything specific in this deck. Yeah, I'm wondering if we just don't need Metamorph because it's not doing anything that we desperately need. I'm also wondering if I can just cut all of the cost reduction cards. I think Nin runs. I think Nin does run Electromancer and Baral, but I don't know that River needs them because she's not as mana intensive. We can probably cut the Electromancer. We can leave Baral in though because he does let me loot when I counterspell. Although I do have to counter a spell, right? Like Baral's not counter an ability loot, or and he certainly isn't exile a card off the stack loot. So those are things that we can do. Oops, Baral. Yeah, that one. Yeah, it has to counter a spell specifically. So I do have a few things that he doesn't work on. That might still be fine though. Like between the discount and occasionally letting me loot off of my counter spells, those two things together might be good enough anyway. So we cut these three, I feel like. That brings us down to 87. See, we're still making good progress. We might have River done by the end of the next stream. I've only got like 20-ish minutes left. I'm not making that much progress that quickly, so I'm not exactly expecting to be done today, but I could see us finishing up like next stream or two, and then we can get on to the what if we don't build it around time walks? What if we focus on other things? I think they're going to be very similar builds. It's just we might even I don't know if we leave in any of the time walks at that point. Like I feel like if I leave any of them in, then it's too close to the more cutthroat version of the deck. And I kind of want to see a fun deck. And if we cut those three, it leaves room for other, or four, because we have the Time Stream Navigator, it leaves room for other cool things we can be doing instead. That's true. I did not count Urza for making the token with his comes into play ability, so we do have a fourth card that Torpor Orb is messing with. That one's also a bit rough, because I don't make a ton of treasure, so at that point, Urza is just for his shuffle and temporal aperture effect. Flip up the top card and I can cast it. Hmm. Probably still have one or two too many manipulate the top card of my deck cards. And I keep thinking I'm not going to do anything with Dockhand, so maybe we just get rid of him now. And we did get rid of Dreamstone Hedron, so I'm starting to think that Muzio is losing a lot of his luster now. Like, he doesn't have to be that good to function, but he's way less powerful when I'm only looking at 4 cards at a time instead of like 6 or 8. Like, I could. Like, I forget what Nin's highest casting cost is, but she definitely has more than one 6-drop in her deck. And she doesn't run Muzio because she doesn't get the same benefit. So, yeah, I think we can cut Muzio safely also. We cut Muz. And we get rid of Merchant. Not that Merchant. That Merchant. Have I actually cut Dreamstone? Because I think that I did. Yeah, okay. So yeah, we can cut Muzio at this point. I think that'll be fine. We're down to 85. Those 2 off. Again, we have more manipulation than card draw. Maybe I also don't want misdirection. Like, Force of Will I'm not cutting. And I don't think I'm cutting Force of Negation either. But misdirection's way more expensive and has even fewer cards it can interact with profitably than Force of Negation does. So I think I'm safe to cut that one. Alright, let's just go bump that off. Because I need to look at other cards anyway, so close enough to the top I can just get rid of it. I kind of see cutting Sphinx. I don't need Alrund. He's fine, though. Other Jace is good. Narset's good. Precognition feels very strong in this deck. Chandra's real good. So Prognostic Sphinx just needs to attack. And I can discard a card to save him from targeted removal if I want to. I don't know that I need either of these Sphinxes, though. Like, they're both fine in the deck. And they do give me, like, larger creatures I can block, like, mid-sized creatures with to stop myself from dying. So being able to block a 4/4 is not the worst thing in the world. Just to keep me alive long enough to get my time walks in order, but like, I feel like they are among the worst cards in my deck for what I'm trying to accomplish. Alright. We will cut them both then. It is a little bit sad because when we cut these, it's now almost exclusively the Time Stream Navigator that needs Lightning Greaves. But I think a creature that time walks and puts itself on the bottom of my deck with River is just way too on brand for me to cut from the deck. And I would like it to actually be able to do its thing properly without having to find another time walk anyway. Because if it has to find another Time Walk anyway, then... Or if I have to copy it with the Form Engine, then I'm not going to be happy with how it performs in the deck, and I would wind up cutting it anyway. Let's try and keep it in the deck, and that does mean Greaves stays in the deck, but Greaves is not its best anymore if we cut the 2 large flyers that give me cards or, deck manipulation when they attack. But yeah, I think if I wanted cards, I might actually be better with Consecrated Sphinx than Clear Skies, so... Well, we're getting close to time. I'm gonna give it 1, maybe 2 more passes, and then I might just call it, because now I'm starting to feel like I'm slowing down a bit more. Struggling to get rid of cards. Alright, I feel like Forgotten Creation and Winds of Change are basically both in here for the same reason. And Winds of Change lets me shuffle and doesn't have to live to my upkeep in order to do its thing, so... I think maybe Forgotten Creation can go, as can all of this dead space in between Innistrad and Eldritch Moons. Field. One of the downsides is that I'm cutting all of these permanents. Fortunately, I have enough artifact-based ramp, so we should be able to get the City's Blessing to get Time Stream Navigator online in the first place. Excuse me. But I am cutting a lot of permanents from this deck. Then again, I cut a lot of other spells. Do I need Raven Form? Like, I have ways to exile artifacts already. This thing is a sorcery. I feel like I let this stay on the list longer than I should have. Like, I accidentally glossed over it down here, as far as interaction goes. Or I cut it off and then forgot to remove it from up there. One of those 2 things happened. Did I forget to put it down here? I might have to do a recount to see if I crossed it, to see if I, cut it down here and then forgot to cut it up there or not. Alright, so I'm going to assume that I forgot to put it down here with the interaction, and that's how it managed to live on the list so long, but it's entirely possible I cut it before and forgot to get it off the main list. Alright, I think that's good enough for right now. We only need 20 more cuts. I should be able to do that, but I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. The pace of the cutting is slowing down, and I probably need to do a recount. So between those 3 things, I think I'm safe to call it here. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.